So Stranger Things Season 4 Volume 2 has just dropped and the internet is going wild over it. Every time a new installment in the show drops, it manages to dominate audiences' social media timelines for the few weeks it's relevant before dropping off again. Between the memes, the theories, the fan edits, and the people thirsting over certain characters, there's normally discussions taking place on how the show is overhyped and not worth the extreme domination it has over people for this time. This tends to happen with event TV, which is rare nowadays as the streaming model seems to have gotten rid of most event TV. Yet Stranger Things remains this globally relevant TV show where it feels like the world is all watching it at once. With Season 4 especially though, I think these claims of it being overhyped couldn't be further from the truth. This season was a return to form for the show and is deserving of the praise it is receiving. To get the obvious out of the way first, this season presents a marked improvement in its technical aspects. Something I've always appreciated the show for has been its editing. I claim it's one of the best edited shows to exist, and this season further backs up that claim. It's filled with technically powerful edits, especially their use of graphic match cuts, which is where scenes with a similar composition are edited together to evoke a certain feeling. This is used a lot in this season to cut between the 4 storylines that we're following, and can often be used to transfer the tension from one scene straight over to the next. It goes without saying, but the music used throughout this season was incredibly powerful, especially Kate Bush, who I'll get to later. The way that the in-world music is edited into and accompanies the soundtrack is just beautiful, and the way that editing is used to match the music elevated many scenes in the show. Accompanying great sonics was beautiful visuals. The show has progressively been getting more visually stunning as it's went on, but this season just took it to another level. You can feel the $30 million budget on display when you're watching it. There were delightful uses of colour theory all throughout this season, particularly when the show chooses to go between red and blue to symbolise the opposition to Vecna. Vecna himself being practical was such a fantastic choice too. There's a little bits of CGI that aren't perfect, but having the villain be completely practical was a lovely change of pace from what we normally expect watching high budget shows now. And this decision just allows Vecna to be the most terrifying villain the show's had yet. It really helped add to the horror elements this season was going for. But the thing that made this season work as well as it did was the narrative. At the end of Season 3, viewers are left seeing all the characters part ways, as the world of Stranger Things no longer is contained to Hawkins. In Season 4 we pick up the story in, who'd have guessed it, 4 parts. The California story, which further splits into the California gang and Eleven on her own adventure, the Hawkins gang, and the Russian storyline. Now, this isn't something new to television. There's many examples of shows splitting up their main cast into different storylines that either converge or stay separate. The best example of this being Game of Thrones. Much like Game of Thrones, the storylines we follow this season aren't necessarily tonally consistent. The Californian storyline feels like a stoner comedy, the Hawkins story is the centre of the horror going on, the Russian story feels like an adventure film, and Eleven is just reliving trauma for a bunch of episodes. What this splitting of stories allowed the show to do was, 1, to use editing to great effect, as it allowed the show to leave storylines on cliffhangers to then pick up on different storylines. This in my opinion greatly reduced how long each episode felt, as when one storyline was overstaying its welcome, it could switch to another one that was more interesting. Or when one was building tension and it cuts, you're desperate to keep watching other storylines to get back to that one. Splitting stories isn't a guarantee that every character will get fleshed out. For example, Euphoria recently struggled to give all its characters development even in separate stories. This is where the length of the episodes again comes into great effect. This gave the Duffer Brothers time to sit with all of the characters and to give them some sort of development throughout the season. Now, the amount of character development each character got certainly varies. For example, Jonathan has far less development than, say, Lucas this season, but there is a clear attempt at progressing each characters forward in their arcs. The runtime of the episodes simply accommodates this. With a cast this big as well, it's still a huge achievement that most of their stories got pushed forward in a meaningful way. Something Stranger Things has been no stranger to has been its perfect introduction of new characters each season. Often these new characters become just as nuanced as the original ones, and the writers use a masterful way of getting us to care about them in a matter of minutes. Take Eddie, for example, who by the end of the show was certainly a fan favourite. We know nothing about him going into the show, but immediately we get a sense of who he is. And this is done using established characters. Immediately in the first episode, we see how he interacts with Dustin and Mike, and since the audience is already familiar with these two characters, we're able to infer from their interactions who Eddie is, just by observing how he fits into the already established dynamics we know. There's countless examples of this throughout the show, most noticeably with Max's character in Season 2. It's an easy way for the writers to give us a sense of who someone is without having to dedicate lots of screen time to them. As mentioned, this season has 4, or at points 5, storylines concurrently running, each with a slightly different tone. The writers use this as an opportunity to assign certain characters a tone which they can use to inform viewers of the tone of the storyline without having to re-establish it. For example, Max this season is used to indicate sadness, and horror often follows her character. Hopper this season is in a grueling situation. There's often a lack of comedy or lightness to his storyline. On the other hand, Joyce and Murray, while getting themselves in tumultuous situations, their characters often are accompanied by a more light-hearted comedic tone. So when these two storylines converge, the tones blend together as well, giving Hopper a more light-hearted story and Joyce and Murray a more darker story. The structure of this season is also wildly interesting. This season doesn't really follow a traditional 3-act structure, but it does kind of follow the structure of a trilogy of films, a 3-climax structure. Those climaxes being the end of episode 4, the end of episode 7, and practically all of episode 9. It's these climaxes and how the story changes building to each one that makes this season so powerful. Firstly, let's talk about episode 4 and the running up that hill scene. Up until this point, Vecna's power has been affirmed in the multiple killings he's already committed, so a sense of fear has already been established. Then when we learn that he's picked his next victim, Max, we're aware of the consequences of this. We spend the entire episode essentially saying goodbye to Max, allowing her to find closure, while setting up an expected Chekhov's gun in the letters she gives to her friends. We even see Max reading one of them to Billy. At this point, Max has accepted death, she's made peace with Billy, and in her mind, she's said goodbye through the letters. All signs point to her being taken by Vecna, because essentially, she's accepted this herself. This is why that scene becomes so powerful. You can take it at face value of Max outrunning a monster because a song saved her, but it's the symbolism and what this reflects in her life up until this point that imbues this moment with meaning and emotion. Max has been spiraling into a pit of depression ever since Billy was killed, to the point where the guilt she feels has led to her accepting death. This could be viewed as a metaphor for Max wanting to commit suicide. The song itself can be viewed as a manifestation of her guilt. Despite the bad relationship she had with her brother, she wishes she could swap places with him, that she could die so he could live. But the moment turns into an emotional inversion. The song takes on a different meaning when she sees her friends. She wants to run away from this clutch of depression. She then gets flashbacks to all these happy moments in her life with her friends. It gives her a sudden desperation to live. This manifests itself in her physically running away from the hold the depression has had on her since Billy died, and when she escapes and realizes she's surrounded by her friends, it gives her a cathartic moment that allows her to see there is still light in her life. Also, it goes without saying that all of this is sold by the incredible performance Sadie Sink gives in this episode and throughout the entire season. It also is a great link back to season 1, and possibly a hint as to how Will survived so long, as it was due to music that had meaning to him. The second climax is where we finally get some answers, not only pertaining to this season, but to the mythology of the show. Throughout the season, Eleven has been using the Nina project to try and get her powers back by reliving moments of her childhood in the lab. When she finally gets to the moment that we saw at the beginning of this season, it's revealed that one is Vecna, while at the same time Nancy discovers that Vecna is also Henry Creel, and that he's been behind all of the strange things happening in Hawkins. While prior to the first climax, the story is trying to show how evil Vecna is, the story before the second climax is used to prepare us for the final, but also to give some answers to things people have been questioning for a while. There is a lot of criticism for the second and third seasons of the show, many stating that it should have just ended after season 1, but I think this part of the story, and in particular this climax, validates the prior seasons as it shows the foundations laid in those seasons, even if they didn't give viewers answers in the moment. This showed viewers that there is a plan for the future and the show has been building towards an ending. The final climax is essentially the big battle, the fight for Hawkins. Now many are critiquing the Duffer Brothers for playing it too safe, for not killing any of the original cast and exploiting Eddie as a way to kill someone that wasn't on the show since the start. However, I think this final episode done something incredibly smart for the future of the show. The episode is about 2.5 hours, and I was on the edge of my seat because I thought many of the characters were going to die. The reason you think this watching the episode is because they bait you into thinking this. Steve has multiple conversations with Nancy about the future he wants, and Max and Lucas make plans for a date, which are normally telltale signs someone isn't making out of the episode alive. A lot of the characters have cathartic conversations with other characters in either episode 8 or 9. What this allows the show to do going forward is to just kill off characters as they see fit, since they've had their moment to confess something or express something to other characters. The setup has been done so the final season can just get right into the main story. But also, characters dying doesn't necessarily mean good tension in a show, and what the show was able to do was create vast amounts of tension over the safety of our characters successfully, which should be commended. Yes, Volume 2 did feel like setup, but it successfully set up where the story will head while still providing payoff, both for the season and the show as a whole. The tagline for this season was "the beginning of the end," and that is the perfect way to summarise this season. Thanks for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts on Season 4 of Stranger Things, and who was your favourite character? If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more content like this, and don't forget to let me know in the comments below what you found in frames.